Welcome back to the Sasquatch and Squirrel show. Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question, Phil. What is the obsession with women wanting to watch murder mystery shows, or as you would call it, murder porn?
Um, well, I mean, the best way to get away with a crime is to study those who have failed.
it's where my brain goes because they want to watch a lot of the women that are actually doing it. And I've watched some of this stuff
Mm-hmm.
with her, and it's like we're watching along, and most of these women are real sneaky, man. They're all into that poison and you know tampering with your food or just doing that sneaky stuff, man. And we're not that sneaky. We'll just come up and pow.
Right.
You're
Yeah.
done, right? But women, they're like they'll smile at you. Okay, you son of a bitch, you're
Mm-hmm.
dying.
Yeah. No, I have had enough of your shit. That's why, you know, when I'm in a relationship, I wake up and I go, honey, I'm sorry for whatever I'm going to do to piss you off today. That way it's out of the way.
But rest assured, I'm going to piss you off.
Yeah. I mean, it's just what it is. You preemptively apologize.
I guess in that vein, one of the topics today is on serial killers or
And it's
killers in
more
general.
so we're not going to like glorify these people at all or anything like that, but we have
No.
examples of some serial killers that we're going to talk about, but we're also going to touch on the types of serial killers, not how they commit the crime, but their psychology behind it per se is I think is what I'm trying to get at. There's four different
Sure.
types. You have hedonistic, power and control, mission oriented, and visionary. Now, hedonistic should pretty much speak for itself. It's about the rush, it's about a lust sexual power there, some sort of gain, whether it be financially or whatever. But think about like a Jeffrey Dahmer type for that one. Then you have the power slash control it's the satisfaction of having complete control. There's a sexual component to it, which, the motive is gain, whether it be financial or whatever. Think like a Ted Bundy on that one. Then you have the mission oriented type, which is like a Charles Manson, where he wanted to eradicate certain people, and they believe that they're ridding the world. Generally, they're not psychotic; they're just delusional. And then you have the visionary types who suffer from some sort of psychosis. So, and they hear voices like it's God or demons or whatever. Victims are random. So they're your unorganized type of killer. Those are the four main.
Okay. With serial killers, there are common traits of serial killers. They have a superficial
Mm-hmm.
charm, lack of empathy, childhood trauma, animal cruelty, fantasies and
Mm-hmm.
obsessions, pathological lying, narcissism, escalating violence, fascination with the law enforcement, as you said, a need for
Mm-hmm.
control. There's several different traits that are red flags for serial killers, and yeah, you just got to be careful of somebody, especially anybody that torments
Yeah,
an
I mean
animal.
that's usually the first sign when someone's kicking a puppy. You like, okay, what's wrong with you? Like
Yeah, there's a
there's a
problem
problem.
there.
I mean, they're hurting an animal, they're hurting people, whatever. There's and this is where they don't they probably don't think they need the help, which is usually a sign that you do, you know?
Right. Now, I would tell you back when I was a kid, we were disciplined if we did something like
Mhm.
that, and let your imagination go wild with that.
Mhm.
But we learned quickly that didn't work.
No, of course not, and nor should it.
People
Yeah,
discipline
well,
your children.
exactly. I mean, you don't need to bludgeon them. You don't hurt the
No.
child, you correct the child. And this is coming from someone who's not a
Right.
parent, you know what I mean? I don't know how it works.
Right.
It's above my pay grade because you couldn't convince me to be a parent.
Right. Not right
Not
now.
right now.
No,
Ain't
no,
no
no,
way.
no.
I like this
Mm-mm.
thing called freedom. Thanks. Anyways,
Yeah.
so what you got for your all-star roster of serial killers?
All right. I got three of
Okay.
them on my list. One of them being Wolfgang Schmidt. I also have
Okay.
Ted Bundy, and I also have the infamous BTK killer. His name was Dennis
Nice.
Rader. And I'll start off with Wolfgang
Okay.
Schmidt. He's a German. He was known as the Beast of Belitz, and that is a town in Germany, apparently a small town, or at least it was around this time. He killed 5 women and an infant. Now, this interesting person had a sexual fetish of wearing women's underwear, soiling them, and getting off on that concept, which is called
Okay.
coprophilia. He was also necrophiliac.
God.
Yeah. Well, in his mind, they wasn't dead, from what the psychologist said, and he was denying it. But eventually, later on, he was like, "Yeah, it was me." So how did this guy get started? Well, he claims as a young child he went through his mother's closet, found her lingerie, tried it on, and had a little bit of childhood, pleasure out of it. And I'm not saying that he was doing the things that he was doing then, but he basically said that he just wanted a closer relationship with his mother, and this is how he tried that out. But I say he was around 6 or 7 years old when he went through his mother's closet.
Uh, uh, I mean, you could possibly try having a meaningful conversation with your mom. I mean,
Right.
there's that other. I mean, saying, "Hey, mom, how was your day?" Or
Right, right, right.
that's how you build that bond, not running around in her underoos.
Yeah. Or mom, tell me about when you were a kid. How did this happen?
Right.
A little forward thinking. Uh, and you know, when his mom found out that her son was trying on, mama's pleasure panties,
Ugh.
she, she flipped her shit naturally. I mean,
Well,
I can understand flipping your shit a little bit, but apparently she went overboard, beat him a lot with that.
fucking not enough. Sorry.
Well, I'll expand on that later. He didn't really have an age range, so he wasn't really looking for an age type. He just wanted the pleasure of his perversion to get satisfied. Now, he didn't start off by murdering. He was originally stealing women's undergarments, soiling them,
Mhm.
doing his thing. So he would go to picking underwear off of
Mhm.
clotheslines. Because back in the day, kids, we didn't have washers and dryers. We had the good old Mother Nature drying off your clothes.
Mhm. Actually, which is a
And
far superior way because it smells fantastic.
he would actually go through landfills, dump sites, and stuff like that, and find women's garments. And regardless of what shape they were in, he would still try them on and do his thing. Well, one time I don't know if this lady was at a dump site or where she was, but I think she was at her home hanging up her clothes, if I want to be correct here. And he saw her and didn't see a lot of stuff on the clothesline that would interest him. And as he went through her shed, found a hammer and unfortunately murdered her with the hammer, stripped her, and did
Mm.
his thing. And apparently he tried that on a lot of people and got away with it for a while. And he tried doing it with some children, and luckily they got away, and they were the ones that actually gave the police the description of him. So that was at least a good first start. So now they knew what to look for because the way he was doing things, there was no pattern. And usually serial killers follow
Right.
a pattern or they have a keepsake or
Some types of
something.
killers will keep a keepsake for the gratification of remembering the kill. But there's
Hmm.
some like your disorganized killers, they are killers of opportunity. They use memory versus keepsakes.
Right, right. Going back to this person, so he was out trying to lure these girls, and that attempt failed.
Mhm.
They gave the police a description, and the police, now that they have a description of this fella, they knew what they were looking for, but now they just had to figure out how to bring this guy in. So they were out in the forest and they kind of dropped undergarments in different spots, and there's people that was watching these things that they dropped around to like kind of bait the field, like you know, luring the predator in.
Mm-hmm. Bait in a trap.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, it's exactly what it is. I mean, it was a brilliant plan to get him to come out of the woodwork so they can catch his self.
Right. Well, unfortunately, the forest or area that he was in was not the area that the police were in. But some passerbys caught this guy over here doing the nasty with himself in another area, and they went and turned him in, and they just were like, "Okay, this is where he was. Go get him." And they're like, "All right, well." Eventually, somehow or another, they caught this guy and brought him in, and he was sentenced for 15 years in prison for the dastardly deeds that he did, which I think
Hmm.
15 years is a little shy on the year count. But they admitted him to a psychiatric ward, which he is unlikely to ever get out. Thank
Yeah,
God.
thank God. Yeah, Jesus Christ.
Who you got?
Ugh. Well, speaking of mission oriented,
Hmm.
I chose the DC sniper. So now you could say this two ways. You could say the DC sniper or the DC snipers. We're going to go with ers on this one because there was two of them.
Yeah.
So the guy that pulled the trigger was John Allen Muhammad,
Hmm.
and his accomplice was named Lee Boyd Malvo, if I'm saying that right, Malvo, who was 17 at the time. So he just shy of an adult. He knew what he was doing. But anyways, a little backstory here. This happened in the year 2002. It was a 3 week period in October of that year.
I remember that.
Um, yeah, it was all over the news. Like I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
people it effectively shut down the DC Beltway.
And another thing to think about with this right here, it was right after 9/11, so people were already squirrely on this kind of stuff.
Right. After the years have passed, it's been 22 years now. There's never been a motive for why he did it. If you're not familiar with the story of this gentleman, I don't want to say gentleman, this scumbag convinced this kid to drive him around in a 1990 blue Chevy Capri that they customized. Basically, they took out the back steel part of the trunk where the passenger or the back seats are, and he would go in there. He had his little Bushmaster AR-15. It was a 223 chambered in, and he would just pick people at random and shoot them, and then he killed 10 people, injured three, and I mean gravely injured three. It goes to tell you that there's just no rhyme or reason with these people, and he never came out with a motive as to why he actually did it. I'm bored, I'm going to go modify a car for a sniper hide and just start randomly shooting people who are going grocery shopping or riding a bike or coming out of their house.
Yeah, it's sick.
It is sick. He was trying to rid the world of something, or who knows?
There is no real justification for any of that bullshit. We all know this.
No,
I mean, I wonder if it was a religious thing because he's Arabic, ain't he?
no, he's African American. I don't know his religious background. It doesn't, in any of the research that I read, it didn't come up. I mean, you figure with a name like Mohammed, he may be, of a certain religion, but I don't know for sure.
Was really a factor in that. Okay, I get it.
Yeah, I don't think it. I just think he got a chip on his shoulder and convinced this kid to drive him around while he did this, and now the kid's like, oh, I was sexually abused and this and this. I mean, I'm not saying that it didn't happen, but people will say and do anything when you put their freedom on the line.
Right. And also, I'm not going to say that a religion is responsible for the nonsense,
Right.
but it's, just one of those things that we had to be mindful of around that time.
Exactly. I mean, as I've told somebody once before, I said God likes spiritual fruit, not religious nuts.
There you go. I love it.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's my take on the DC sniper. I mean, obviously, we're missing the nuance here. We're just doing a goofy podcast to have fun. This is serious stuff, but you never know what happens in these people's minds and what it takes. Like we discussed in a previous episode of Killdozer, what pushes somebody to that limit.
Right. My next person is Ted Bundy.
Mm-hmm.
This guy right here was definitely a narcissist. He thought he was smarter than everybody. He tried to make it all about himself.
Mm-hmm.
So this guy was definitely one of those. He was a brilliant man.
Mm-hmm.
He was handsome, charismatic, disarming personality, practiced law. To jump around a little bit at the very end of his sentencing, even the judge was like, I wish we'd have met on different circumstances because you would have made a hell of a lawyer. I enjoyed, watching you perform and think that your talents could have been led to better things.
Hmm.
And it's true. You think if they would have put as much effort into becoming a positive member of society versus a shitbag,
Right.
then you would have think that the world would have been a much better place. But unfortunately, he chose the route that he chose, and he knew exactly what he was doing. And he just had a sickness, and unfortunately, he carried out his plan.
Yeah.
We're talking about like people being, raised in abusive homes. Well, let's talk about his upbringing. Supposedly, he was raised believing that his grandparents was actually his parents, and his real mother was his sister. All of this was to protect his mother from the social stigma of having a child out of wedlock and having an absent father. And now, can you imagine how confusing this must have been for him?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, and then I guess if you're looking at it from the lens of today, where single mothers are prevalent, and that's no judgment on my end,
Hmm.
I'm just, it's more accepted in this day and age.
Right,
I don't know where he grew up. Maybe it was a small town, whatever may have you. I don't know. Who knows what the reasoning behind that was, but it doesn't make any sense to me as to why have that kind of secrecy amongst themselves.
right,
The family. I could see the outsiders, keeping it a secret from people like that because it's none of their fucking business.
right. Mind your fucking business.
Mind your goddamn business. But which most people don't do anyways.
No,
So, but
especially us,
yeah, yeah, because we're here talking about it, anyways.
right? The way he lured his victims in, a good majority of them, he would like have like a fake cast
Hmm.
on his arm and come up to somebody like, "Hey, can you help me? I got a canoe on my car. I need to get it off, and of course, with a broken arm, I can't really do anything." Now, if that was me, I'd have been like, "The fuck you doing out here with a broken arm trying to canoe, anyways, dude? Get the fuck out
Well,
of here."
and also, how did you get it on?
How'd you get it up there, right? You got it up
Yeah,
there somehow, slick. Managed to get it off there yourself.
yeah. May God be with you.
But people were a little bit more friendly back in the day, so I get it. Not everybody's a curmudgeon like me and you.
Valid point.
But you know, I mean, and there was another one. There was like an actual documentary that had actors and actresses and stuff like that go through there. And one of the ones that happened, I don't know if this was an actual one, but it seems plausible for this character. He was over here carrying books to his car, and I forget what school he was at the time when he did this,
Hmm.
but he dropped the books, and a girl saw that, and he's like, "Hey, can you please help me out?" She said, "Oh yeah, sure." I helped him out, small talked with him, and he's like, "Hey, what's that in the car there?" And she looked and went, pow, right up the side of the head with a tire iron, and there she goes. Now she's abducted.
Hmm.
He was very disarming. No one expected this guy to be who he was, but he was definitely, a shitbag.
And the fact that he was playing against women's, maternal nature with
Right,
that
right.
whole oh, I got a broken arm. So yeah, that's a Machiavellian motherfucker right there. Like he's
Hmm.
just sneaky as shit.
Yeah,
So.
and he had this girl that he was like really into, and
Mhm.
he got her. He actually convinced this girl to actually like go out with him, but after he got what
Right.
he wanted, he decided to break it off with her. And then all the girls that he murdered were beautiful women, and I guess it was trying to fulfill that.
Fantasy.
Yeah,
Right.
it's weird. Now,
Yeah.
where this guy fucked up was he tried to kidnap a girl. He was posing as a police officer, and
Mhm.
I don't want to mention the lady that was the victim, but
Mhm.
she told the police about what happened. Well, a police officer later on was monitoring a neighborhood and aware of the situation with the guy in a Volkswagen Bug. The police pulled him over, and he actually had a burglary kit in his car.
Wow.
That right there was probable cause enough to like bring him in. Well, this dude, he was arrested in court, trying as his own lawyer. He was smart. He knew that the court library, legal library, was low monitored on security, and he jumped out the window and escaped.
Nice.
Like, this is not the first time this guy's escaped, man. He's escaped several times, but this dumbass, as smart as this guy was, he was a little bit too brazen. He went to go back to Aspen after escaping into the wilderness for about 6 days. He went to go to Aspen and steal a car. And then the police had a blockade up, and he drove to the blockade and did a Yui. And they're like, let's go get that asshole. Let's go figure out what's going on.
Right.
They caught him, and he escaped prison again. And by the time that they actually figured out that he was gone, he was already 1,000 miles away. I think he went to Chicago, but he ended up getting caught while he was in Florida. He did a very terrible crime at the Florida State University at like a sorority house. I'm not going to explain the crime. You could look it up yourself. The great thing is once they actually caught him, that first girl that got away from him, luckily, she verified that, yeah, that was the asshole that kidnapped me. Also with the dental records, because one of the things that he was doing in the crime was he was leaving teeth marks on people by biting them. And they matched his teeth perfectly because he had a very particular set of teeth. He was put to death by electrocution. But this guy killed people in at least 5 states. It was Washington State, Oregon, Utah, Colorado, and Florida. Those are the ones that he actually admitted to.
Mm-hmm.
He actually killed approximately 36 people across 7 states for what he said. But, I mean, I know I didn't list 7 states there, but, I mean, it's thought that he killed a hell of a lot more.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's the same thing. I'm going to deviate here for a little bit, but there's like Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. He took, he killed, dozens of people, and and when he was on his way to prison, he actually said, "Hey, here's a couple more you don't know about." So, I mean, the thing is that they only get caught for what they can get caught for,
Right.
and it's like, so they're not going to know every single crime because it'd be impossible to tell because you don't know how long these people have been active.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it gets to be a slippery slope. And we don't know what happens, in the next state over.
Right.
And, and I could literally be, across the country in 2 days.
True.
If I took a car,
Yeah.
or if I took a plane, a few hours.
Mm-hmm.
My next one is not so much a serial killer as he's just a unique person. And I don't mean that in a good way. I chose Ed Gein, and his last name is spelled Gein. So if I'm butchering that, I don't care. He's a piece of crap.
Right.
He didn't necessarily, he killed 2 people, but his thing was he was like a grave robber, and he was a collector per se. When they figured out that he killed these 2 people, they went and got him, and went to his house, and it was like a house of horrors in there. Like,
yeah,
they found skulls. They found a belt made out of human nipples, which is just okay.
Of all the absurd things to have.
Yeah, it's like, oh, where'd you pick that up? Oh, the flea market. No, you didn't. Anyways,
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm a leather worker by hobby. Right. Just of all the things to have a belt of, hey, check out my belt of nipples. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
What do you go around wearing this shit?
Hopefully in the comfort of his own home. Anyways, and then, but they found like skulls and a lamp that's the lampshade was skin.
Wow.
So if you look at Mr. Gein and his life, his mother was incredibly religious. His father was an alcoholic, couldn't keep a job, so the mother hated the father, and it was a very tumultuous upbringing. So it was not fun for him. And then his mother would read the Bible to him and his brother every day, and warn him of women, how they're naturally promiscuous, and how you shouldn't drink, and just your basic Bible beat down every day,
right,
of how you breathe, you're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So he had this repressed nature in his life, and you throw in a little bit of mental health issues, it's a recipe for disaster. And so I think he exhumed as many as 40 corpses.
Wow, he was busy.
Yeah, he was. Also, a fun little side fact, there's 3 movies that the villains are based on about this person. So you have Silence of the Lambs, which is Buffalo Bill, is based off of Ed Gein. Norman Bates from Psycho is based off of Ed Gein. And Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw Massacre is also based off of him as well. So I'm not glorifying that, but those are good movies. So you've done some fucked up stuff when you got, people making horror movies about you.
If I could interject for a moment,
No,
for how many people did you say that he b- uncovered?
at least 40. As many, exhumed as many as 40 corpses is what the research said.
Fuck. Well, all right. Look, a little bit about my background. One of my first jobs, and I worked in the funeral industry for over 8 years of my life.
Mhm.
I was a grave digger, and unfortunately, one of the jobs is you do have to exhume bodies, but you're picking up the whole uh, vault and all that right there. Or if there's an exemption that needs to come out of the mausoleum, then you'll pull them out of the mausoleum, and uh, the medical examiner will do what they have to do, right?
Mhm.
But that's a lot of fucking work, dude. You have to
Yeah.
be dedicated to pull that many corpses out of the ground. And like now, a lot of people think bodies are 6 foot deep. Not the case a lot of the times, but maybe back in the day, probably so. But that, and that's a smell that you'll never get past.
Mhm.
That's nuts.
Yeah, part of my training for my job, we had to view autopsies,
Hmm.
and that's an experience you'll never forget.
Right.
Just the smell alone, if like, ugh. But I
Yeah.
couldn't imagine. I mean, but then again, this feeds into the mentality of these people, to the psychology of these people of how they're not right because they're not. They have some sort of chemical switch in their brain that isn't working appropriately.
Right. I mean, did they ever get like a motive of why this motherfucker decided to do what he did?
Yeah, his motive was he had a whole torso of a woman. So basically, what he was trying to do is he was trying to compose a woman's suit.
Okay. Oh yeah, I remember this guy. Yeah, he was trying to make a woman's suit, and he was like picking bits and pieces off others to put it all together for whatever
Hmm.
fucked up reason that was about.
Yeah, there you go. That was his motive. Is he wanted to be a woman.
And they didn't offer that surgery back in the day with the hormones and all that.
Exactly. So there you go.
Gotcha.
Hmm.
I remember this guy now. Yeah, that is a fucked up individual. Ugh.
Sick motherfucker,
You
man.
know that motherfucker tried that shit on. I mean, dude,
Well, yeah, tucking his sack back like Buffalo Bill.
just
Fucking
terrible.
why? Yeah, just
Yeah,
didn't need
right.
that visual. Sorry.
Right.
Dude, I'm gonna go outside and soak up some sun after this. This is depressing.
Right. So Dennis Rader is my next one.
Mm-hmm.
He's
Oh,
the
BTK.
bind, torture, kill. Now you
Yeah.
want to talk about somebody extreme narcissist.
Yeah.
This guy right here was the one,
Mm-hmm.
and he was convicted of 10 murders, and this happened in Wichita, Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm a
Well, I mean, what else is there to do in Kansas?
uh, dodge tornadoes.
Sorry. Sorry.
I'm sure our Kansas listeners will love this.
I mean, yeah.
All right, Kansas listeners, please reach out to us. Tell us what there is to do other than go to work and raise a family in Kansas, please.
Yes.
So in 1974, supposedly is when he started killing. And this lasted roughly 3 decades, but he took his time on these things. At first, he was going ape shit for a little while, but uh, he had some downtime here and there, so he went dormant for a while. And people thought that, like, while he was dormant, that he was actually dead or arrested or what have you, right?
Mm-hmm.
But his first kill was a brazen one at that. Apparently, it was a group of 4 people. I think it was a mother, father, and 2 children.
Oh wow, so he was what they would call a family annihilator then.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if he actually had that luck on every kill like that, but usually it was just like one person that he would just destroy.
Mm-hmm.
The first kill was a group of people who actually just moved into the area where Dennis lived,
Mm-hmm.
and he unfortunately ended that family. Talking about a little bit of his background, Rader, he was not one of these kind of guys that you would just find as a creepy bastard. I mean, he was a pillar in his community church. I mean, he was like a president of the church, if I want to. be accurate with this.
Mhm.
And he was a Boy Scout leader. He was a Air Force veteran, and while he was in the Air Force, he worked in systems. Seems like a low key job for that, but that kind of background gave him a job as a security system installer.
Mhm.
I will refrain from naming the company. But you got to think around this time, he was installing security systems and getting the lay of the land. And you got business was a booming for him because, hey, we got a serial killer that binds, tortures, and kills people. And it's been around this area. Oh, by the way, you're going to need a security system.
Yeah.
Let me come in and, walk right into this job. I mean, that dude was
Fucking
making some money.
yeah, like highly convenient, you know what I
Right.
mean?
Right. I mean, how much more disarming? You're trusting a person to do the job for you, and unfortunately, this guy's a fucking psychopath.
Yeah, for sure.
So when he was doing this right here, 3 men were arrested that was suspected of the kills that Rader was doing, and Rader was pissed about this.
Mhm.
He was like, "You know what? I'm gonna write a letter to the police and be like, nobody's to take the credit for my kills. These are my kills. How dare you?
Mhm.
So he was very, very taken back by, people, claiming or being arrested for his bad deeds.
And that just fits the narcissistic behavior to a T, right? Like, how
Hmm.
dare you take it, take credit for what I've done over my 30-year career as a serial killer.
Right. He was a family man too.
Mhm.
And like nobody suspected him of doing anything bad. But if somebody is like going out late at night and doing things like that, I mean, yeah, you gotta think. But he would also do things in the daytime.
Mhm.
Sure, he's going to work, whatever. I mean, he's over here killing people, but that's not a great social activity.
No, I mean, it's generally frowned upon when you take
Generally.
someone's life from them. That's why it's called capital murder, because it's a crime.
You would think this guy, he was a very tactical killer. He moved like a ghost, and just like he was so brazen to like even call to report the murders and like where they would find the bodies and just he took pleasure in playing this game of cat and mouse with the police because
Right.
in his mind, Dennis Rader was a genius, and the dumb police and the dumb everybody else couldn't match his level of intellect. So
Mhm.
um, there again, we have another smartass thinking that he's highly intelligent and just ends up getting caught later on. But the police had nothing to link to this fella for several years. And for a while, he was dormant, as I said.
Mhm.
The people of Wichita thought the horror was over with, but then again, he started killing again with 2 more people, and then he would stop again for 5 years.
Mhm.
One time, this is what caught him. He got caught by sending a TV station, I believe, a floppy disk, and this is like not the big floppy disks from back when you and I were going to elementary school and stuff. These are
Mhm.
like the 3.5-inch floppy disk.
Yeah, the harder it's considered a floppy disk, but it's still solid.
Yeah, it's a hard disk
Yeah.
actually.
Mhm. Yeah.
And on that floppy disk, it gave his identity away because there was a document on there that was deleted,
Mhm.
and they recovered that document and had his name and his church in it. And they Googled that right there because back in the day, Google did exist.
Mhm.
They pulled it up, and here he is on the front page. He's the president. They got a name to the face now, so they went to go pay your boy a visit.
Mhm.
And at first, when he got caught, he didn't want to have a trial, so he pled guilty to it just to avoid the trial.
Mhm.
The people of Wichita were like, "No, we want to know what the fuck happened."
All these people that don't know what happened to their loved one have a fucking right to know.
They do. They have a front row seat to that bullshit.
They deserve closure more than this guy deserves not going through the circus of going through a trial.
Right.
And my thing is, like, I'm sorry for Mr. Rader's family. They could be left out of it, but he needs his day in court to be able to answer for his crimes, appropriately, and to tell the people that don't know what happened to their loved one, what
Hmm.
happened to their loved one.
Right. And for somebody to pull the kind of heinous act that this fella did, he should have been not really just in prison, but he should have been executed, like it brought right to the front of the line.
Yeah, exactly. He should have got an express ticket to the front of the line.
Exactly. And like when he was sentenced, since I think Kansas didn't really have a death penalty or they didn't want to, issue that, he was issued 10 consecutive life sentences with a minimum of 175 years.
Good. And then you ask me, that's just a little too short.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly think all they're doing is keeping that motherfucker as a trophy for the money and collect the paycheck that the poor taxpayers have to keep that son of a bitch housed and fed.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the thing is like, so he's going to get free health care. He's going to get food. I mean, granted, it's prison.
Hmm.
You can go on this rant about how he's going to get taken care of, but it's prison. It's fucked up.
Yeah, there's a minimum part of life that he has to deal with, but unfortunately, it's kind of like the Shawshank Redemption. This guy has a single cell, so he's in solitary,
Mm-hmm.
so he's not amongst the general population.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, I just think when anytime that a prison or a state uses a prisoner like that right there, it's just basically they're collecting the income off of such an infamous person.
Well, yeah, I mean, we could talk about the privatization of prisons in another episode because it's a thing in this country. In a nutshell, fuck you, Dennis Rader.
Yeah, 100%. So who's your other guy?
Now, this guy's a little bit more obscure. I sound like we're fucking talking about trading cards here, but anyways, his name is Luis Gravito. He's a Colombian guy.
Hmm.
Confessed to the torture and rape of over 147 young boys.
Wow.
Yeah. So he was found
147.
guilty on like 140 counts of which should, if the math is done right, would lead to 1,853 years in prison. But because Colombia has a law on the books that it only limits it to 30
Okay.
years. And he was convicted. He was sentenced in 1999.
Did they not have a death penalty?
No, they don't. And because he has good behavior, he could get out soon. He's scheduled for release in 2029.
That's just right around the corner. Oh, fuck.
Keep his ass in Colombia. So, I mean, it makes you wonder yet again, like, what was the motive? What drove these people to do this?
I mean, and for so long, I mean, you would think that, I mean, you said he murdered, right?
He would rape them before he murdered them. So, yeah, he killed them.
Okay.
He was brutally raped himself as a young boy. He was in an attempted rape of a 12-year-old boy in 1999. I'm not going to mention the kid's name. And he was held for a long time until he finally confessed to all these rapes and murders and stuff.
Gotcha. It seems like his behavior is because, like, whatever happened to him as a child, he was mirroring that to kind of get revenge at the person that was doing it. I don't want to minimize what happened to the victims at all, but it just seems like that's probably one of the reasons why he did what he did, just mirroring.
Yeah, well, and that's usually how that whole thing with sexual trauma happens, right? It happens if usually people that it happened to will offend in some way. Sometimes, not always.
Right.
But yeah, he mostly targeted low income families. So hopefully he doesn't get out, and if he does, hopefully it stays a Colombian problem.
Hopefully it doesn't become a Texas border issue.
Right.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's it's going to wrap this one up for us. I need to go outside and soak up some sun.
All right, so where can they find us, brother?
You can find us on Rumble, YouTube, the usual SasquatchAndSquirrel@gmail.com, Facebook at the Sasquatch and Squirrel Show, and Truth Social as well. And we truly appreciate you guys listening to us and engaging with us, and we'll talk to you later.
Follow the questions.
Find the truth.
We're out.